the second person.
Let's go low.
UFC, from a near-bankrupted organization snagged for a mere $2 million to a powerhouse reigning supreme at a jaw-dropping $10 billion. Picture this, from TV rights being scoffed at to sealing a game-changing $1.5 billion pact with the sports giant ESPN. How on earth did the UFC pull off this spectacle? How did Dana White work his magic, breathing life back into the shattered pieces of early UFC and crafting his own empire? Welcome, Revenue Racers. In today's thrilling installment of the Revenue Race, we're diving into the gameplay of the star revenue racer, Dana White, as he masterfully unfolds his blueprint for building UFC into a $10 billion empire. As the stakes are high and the game is heating up, without further delay, let's kick off this exhilarating race. Section 1. Birth of UFC. In the early 1990s, the birth of the UFC heralded a groundbreaking moment in combat sports, driven by the visionary Mark Davis. Fueled by his childhood passion for boxing, Davis embarked on a quest to determine the world's ultimate fighter. A pivotal turn came when he discovered a Playboy article highlighting Royce Gracie's Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu school in Los Angeles. The Gracie family, revered for innovating Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, had already achieved acclaim in Brazil by triumphing over larger opponents. Davis, captivated by this martial arts effectiveness, approached Royce Gracie with a bold idea: a single elimination, no rules combat tournament. Initially rebuffed by TVKO and set for television partnerships, Semaphore Entertainment Group eventually became the UFC's collaborator. Pitched as a real-life fighting video game, SEG worked with designer Jason Cusson to create the iconic octagon, synonymous with the UFC. The inaugural event, UFC 1, unfolded in Denver, Colorado, chosen for its lack of a boxing commission, ensuring less regulation and legal hurdles. Section 2. Struggles. But with rules limited to no eye gouging and no biting, coupled with no time limits and a referee unable to intervene unless there was a knockout or submission, the UFC emerged with a ruthless edge. The winner of the inaugural tournament was promised a substantial $50,000 reward. However, the success of the first UFC event, which garnered an impressive 86,000 pay-per-view buys, was marred by concerns over production quality and the perceived extreme violence. The New York Times published a damning article titled "Death is Cheap. Maybe it's just $14.95, reflecting the widespread criticism. Senator John McCain went further, branding it human cockfighting and pushing for a nationwide ban on the UFC.
The beginning was human cockfighting. It was. I mean, I've seen people repeatedly getting smashed in the face with a guy sitting on top of him. That's not a sport. That's a throwback to the Roman Colosseum.
By UFC 12, escalating opposition resulted in bans by 36 states and discontinued pay-per-view purchases. Recognizing the need for a transformation, the UFC implemented additional rules, weight classes, time limits, and judges, attempting to appease boxing commissions and politicians, but facing persistent discontent. Section 3. Beginning of Dana White's era. This challenging period led to a pivotal decision: the sale of equity in the UFC to Bob Merowitz, the president and CEO of Semaphore Entertainment Group. However, this partnership was short-lived as Merowitz faced financial losses and legal battles. Dana White, a former boxing trainer turned UFC manager, entered the scene during this tumultuous period. After moving to Las Vegas, White represented fighters like Tito Ortiz and Chuck Liddell, but encountered financial hardships. A crucial moment unfolded in negotiations with Merowitz, who doubted the viability of hosting another event. Seizing an opportunity, White approached friends Lorenzo and Frank Fertitta, founders of Station Casinos. After months of talks, they purchased the UFC for $2 million in 2001, with Dana White becoming president and gaining an equity stake. Despite the acquisition, the early 2000s brought unforeseen challenges, including significant losses exceeding $44 million by 2004, prompting Lorenzo Fertitta to consider selling. Dana White explored potential buyers, but faced offers guaranteeing substantial losses. Section 4. Growth Phase. In a last-ditch effort to salvage the business, Dana White, now in his 40s, invested $10 million in creating The Ultimate Fighter, a reality TV show that featured 16 fighters competing for a UFC contract. Despite facing rejections from major broadcasters, the UFC secured a deal with Spike TV, offering free content while covering the $10 million production costs. This gamble yielded remarkable results. The first season of The Ultimate Fighter concluded with a finale between Forrest Griffin and Stefan Bonner, attracting an astonishing 10 million viewers without any advertising. Surpassing Spike TV's expectations and even outperforming the Masters on CBS that day, the network renewed the show for a second season, marking a transformative period for the UFC. The Ultimate Fighter became instrumental in the UFC's survival, catapulting annual revenue from $14 million in 2004 to an impressive $180 million in 2006. This financial success enabled strategic acquisitions, including organizations like WEC, Pride FC, IFL, and Strikeforce. These moves not only diminished competition, but also introduced a diverse array of stars to the UFC, such as Rampage Jackson, Shogun Rua, Nick Diaz, Tyron Woodley, Daniel Cormier, and Ronda Rousey. The monumental UFC 100 in 2009, with 1.6 million pay-per-view buys, showcased the UFC's widespread appeal. Further strengthening its position, the UFC secured a lucrative 7-year media rights deal with Fox Sports in 2011, worth at least $100 million, ensuring primetime exposure for its events, including The Ultimate Fighter. Simultaneously, the UFC signed a 6-year $70 million deal with Reebok, making them the official apparel partner. While this move faced criticism from fighters for limiting individual sponsorships, Dana White aimed to enhance the UFC's image, a crucial factor in negotiating the next media rights deal. A pivotal moment occurred on November 16, 2012, on the eve of UFC 154, when Dana White confirmed the inclusion of women's MMA, boosting audience engagement.
I mean, we're bringing in the 135-pound division. That's what we're doing. I'm trying this whole women's thing out. Up until tonight, this has all been hypothetical. I think we can look forward to some fun fight.
By the mid-2010s, the UFC had become a global sports phenomenon, hosting over 500 fights annually and creating superstar athletes like Chuck Liddell, Brock Lesnar, Georges St-Pierre, and Anderson Silva. Legalized in all 50 states, the UFC attracted substantial interest. In 2016, the UFC made history with a $4 billion sale to WME-IMG, later known as Endeavor. This monumental deal attracted investments from high-profile celebrities like Jimmy Kimmel, Sylvester Stallone, Mark Wahlberg, Ben Affleck, and others. Rather than retiring, Dana White, committed to the UFC's growth, continued as its president. After the Fox Sports deal ended in 2018, the UFC inked a 5-year, $1.5 billion agreement with ESPN. This deal placed 30 UFC Fight Night events annually on ESPN networks, guaranteeing a substantial annual income of at least $300 million, 15 times more than their previous media deal. Fast forward to April 3, 2023, Endeavor, formerly WME-IMG, unveiled a historic deal merging the UFC with the professional wrestling giant WWE. In this groundbreaking development, Dana White assumes the role of Chief Executive Officer for the UFC in the newly formed public company. Dana White's steadfast trust in the game has not just yielded substantial revenue, but has propelled him into the realm of a star revenue racer. Crafting his own empire, he rose from what seemed like bankrupted stones, alongside his soul friends. Their friendship bond, unwavering trust, and fearless mentality in taking risks are truly valuable lessons to learn. If you have also learned something from today's episode, then let us know with your likes, comments, and subscriptions. Thank you, and see you soon in another inspiring revenue race.